This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. We'll begin the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee this evening at 7:17 p.m. Present are committee members Williamson and Kelly, council members Gilchrist, Scarrow. I don't think I missed anyone else. The mayor, directors of law, finance, human resources, safety, service, and the special assistant to the mayor. This evening, we are discussing ordinance number 2022-98, which is an ordinance amending chapter 749 of the Business Regulations Code of the City of North Olmsted entitled Massage Establishments. Who would like to speak to this?
Madam Chairwoman, our safety director, please.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee and council. This is a pretty straightforward piece of legislation. What we're doing is cleaning up a little bit of the language and making sure that in any of these establishments that not only must the operator be duly licensed in the state by the medical board, but that each practitioner in each massage establishment must also be duly licensed. This was not necessarily the case before. So we're trying to minimize any risk of inappropriate services being provided. So we're ensuring that each practitioner in every establishment will be licensed. This also has a companion piece that was introduced 2022-97 by Director Upton, changing the actual business code to make sure that massage establishments are properly reflected in the city's business code. And I believe the public hearing on that zoning change is scheduled for December 6th.
Trying. Thank you, Director. Let the record reflect that Councilman Glassburn and our Economic Development Director are also present this evening. Director, I noticed that there isn't a stipulation as to when these establishments submit their licenses, so I'm assuming it's prior to any kind of occupancy permit is granted?
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Heeman is also present this evening. Are there any other questions from committee? Questions from council? Okay. Mr. Burns. We cannot hear you, Mr. Burns. Nope, still can't hear you.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to call these housekeeping type items. In section 749.02A 1 through 6, we list about 6 different boards that license for massage therapists. And in the, I'll go through these real quick. In definitions, 749.01D, And in registration process and fee, it would be 749,404 B5.
Mr. Burns, what is the question?
Well, I'll get to it in just a minute.
Okay,
And also in 74906 B1, it states applicable, or it talks about specifically a current and valid license issued by the state medical board. Now we have about 4 different boards mentioned in that other section, and I would suggest that we'd just rephrase it to say license issued by a state board of Ohio. Now you know why I mentioned them all at one time. It's just because right now it just says the state medical board, but there are other boards listed in that one section other than the medical board.
Director?
If I may, yes, it's the state medical board that actually license massage therapists. There are other practitioners such as nurses or chiropractors that may also provide some kind of massage during their regular treatment, but the actual board that licenses a massage therapist is the state medical board.
All right. The reason I was confused is because it says in accordance with a license issued by any of the following, and then it lists like cosmetology, nursing, and occupational therapy and those places. That's what had me, I guess, confused about this.
I don't know, Director Groh, if you have anything to add to help clarify that.
Madam Chairwoman,
Go ahead, Director.
thank you. Yeah, the way it's constructed is it's designed. We're listing the exceptions to those individuals who to the code because this is targeting those who practice massage or massage therapy, right? We want to make sure that it's on the up and up, which is they're limited practice by virtue of the state medical board. So we're saying that this only applies to those specific individuals and establishments. That other section, we're just saying it doesn't apply to them because, as Director Schofield pointed out, there you may have our definition of massage could be applied to a lot of medical professionals. The definition is so broad. So to the extent that a doctor or a chiropractor or anybody, a nurse, anybody else would provide that type of a service, this is not going to apply to them. We're not going to say, well, you didn't register your certificate. The only ones that it is applying to, and that's what those exceptions are listed up there for, is that those who are licensed by the state to practice massage. That's it. That's what the point of this was to try to just say, listen, if you're going to do massage in North Olmsted, you need to be licensed by the state of Ohio. You need to give your certificate to the city so we know you're licensed. And that's that. So the idea of non-medical professionals providing massage in North Olmsted is going away. We're looking to make sure that we've had more problems with this in the past 5 years than you can imagine. So that was the point of this. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that's where this is coming from.
Thank you, Director.
Just something to consider.
Thank you, sir.
And the last item is, Mike? The other item, the last one is in 74903, the title of it, the state is issuing a certificate, or the state issues a license, and the city issues a certificate. And I was wondering if maybe that should read a certificate and registration required.
Madam Chairwoman,
Go ahead, Director.
I mean, I think it works. I think it works as it is for what the objective is. Director Schofield, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Director Grow, that the way that 74903 is broken out into those two sections makes it clear that you must have your certificate in order to open the establishment, and that practitioners must be registered and licensed with the state. So I think it covers both those points.
Thank you, directors.
I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Director Schofield, do you need an emergency clause on this? Do you want it to take effect immediately upon passage, or are you fine with it just going the 30 days?
We don't have anything pressing right now. It could go the full 30 days through the regular process.
Okay.
It would,
Director,
Madam Chair.
Director, you had your hand up. Grow.
It will line up with that other zoning piece, which is still floating around. So they'll come out together, and that's 3 readings in 30 days on the zoning. So it's
Perfect.
okay if it goes the full distance.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from council? All right, then I am going to make a motion to recommend ordinance 2022-98 and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Kelly. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with a vote of 3-0, and our meeting concludes at 7:29 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll roll into finance at 7:29. Present are committee members Williamson, Limpert, and Glassburn, as well as council members Gilchrist, Heeman, Kelly, and Scarl. We have the mayor, the law director, finance director, and all of our other directors, save recreation, and our esteemed guests. On the agenda for tonight is 2022-105, which is the transfer ordinance. And Director Kopfer, would you like to tell us about the changes presented?
Yes, Mr. Chair. First, I want to make sure that we're all looking at the one that was sent on Monday. That's the amended version. For the administrators, I just sent it tonight, but B sent it to council on Monday. And we'll go over both the ones that were on at first reading and then the ones that are also in the amended column. The first item of significance is an increase of $96,000 in contractual services and the finance. That's for the, there was a large increase in the county auditor treasurer fees due to fee increases that they had. Additionally, there was also increase in income tax collection fees, but that's directly related to the increase in income tax collections we've received. And then in the Department of Economic Development, there's an additional $25,000 being added to contractual services. That's an increase for the job creation retention grants that were higher than budgeted. And just recall that was Moen and Commute Air are the ones that are currently in those grants. Then in fire, we increased $80,000 for overtime and longevity. There has been an increase in overtime in the fire department, and so we had to accommodate that. And there's also a related pension and Medicare tax that's associated with that increase. We used the unused salary amounts that are in the police department that will not be filled before the end of the year. And we transferred that to dispatch because we had to increase the salaries, a lot of it in overtime and shift differential, as the contract changed slightly at the beginning of the year after the budget was done. And so it's $78,750 for the wage and overtime portion, and then another $58,000 for hospitalization, pension, and Medicare tax. There were some changes in staffing there, and the healthcare, maybe they were not on our healthcare, and the new person took the family plan. So toward the end of the year, we always have these adjustments where we try and make sure that those benefits are covered for the changes that have occurred. Then in the bottom of the second page in the notes, there's a $150,000 increase. There's a $50,000 transfer to casualty loss fund. That fund is running short during COVID and stuff. We didn't transfer money to it. So, and there have been a couple of issues where we have not caught people, but they have damaged our traffic control systems. And so we're paying for those through our casualty loss fund. And then also $100,000 for the budget stabilization. And then in the law enforcement trust fund, that's on the third page of the items, there's $2,000 for contractual services, which is just an increase for forfeitures. When you receive monies from these raids and these cases, you usually have to pay a fee to the county, court, and some other things. And so we had to increase that line item to be able to pay out the required forfeitures. And we increased for $5,000 to purchase a seized vehicle that we received, and we have to pay. Director Schofield, do you remember the vehicle? We have to pay
We have to pay off the remainder of the lien on it.
That's right. That's
But
right.
it was a very it's a good deal for us because it's a great truck.
It's a Ford F-150, right? Or yeah, it's a nice one.
Correct.
Okay. And so then in the stop fund, we increased the wages for overtime, and then the related portion of hospitalization pension and Medicare tax that comes out of there. There has been a pickup in officers able to work the stop programs toward the end of this year. That's good. And in the state highway fund, we moved $10,950 from materials and supplies to contractual services to increase the contract for crack sealing and pavement marking to be able to do more than what we had originally budgeted for. And then in the solid waste and recycling, there's a $15,000 increase for a lawnmower purchase. And when it's not an increase in the price of the lawnmower, it's just an increase in the budget. When we had gone back to, I know we had already talked to council about the increase in the Jacobson mower pricing, but then when we went back, the budget had not included that increase, and the other lawnmowers that were bought there that were scheduled to be bought out of there took some of the budget, so we couldn't then order that lawnmower. So this is just taking care of that so that we can actually order it as the price that was discussed to council earlier. And on the last page, under Springvale Golf Course and Ballroom, one of the major items is increase for food purchased and for resale. And we do when we're doing that, that means there's more events and more people attending our events, and there's a corresponding offset to revenue for there. So those are good things. So if anyone has any questions on what items I discussed or any of the smaller ones that you have questions on, Mr. Chair.
Yep. I will start with committee. Are there any questions from committee? Seeing none so far. Are there any questions from council? Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The large amount of overtime for the fire department, is that because they're shorthanded, or what would be the cause of that?
Go ahead.
Right now they're only down one position for the current for the current shift. We're in the process of hiring, but I don't know the specific cause of the overtime, other than just regular runs. We've also had a couple firefighters out with new children, so they've been out for paternity leave. So it's just extra overtime right now.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, please.
To Mr. Kelly's question, also to add to Director Schofield, I do believe there are, I know of at least one, possibly two, that were on not off on disability, but off on sick leave of some sort. So those shifts were also being covered with overtime as well. So I think it was just a multitude of things. But this is a fix for the whole year. It's not necessarily just went over. So.
Okay. Any other questions before I ask? Okay. So my question concerns the increase for the dispatch and the decrease from the police. I mean, the amount that we're decreasing from the police is enough, I would assume, for close to at least one full-time equivalent. And we've previously increased the dispatch a decent amount. I don't recall the exact amount, but a decent amount once already this year. So could someone speak to what's going on both of those fronts?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take the first crack at it. We are down on officers. We are trying to interview and fill them as quickly as we can. As you know, we've sworn in a few new officers already, and you'll have 2 more coming in December. So we have been down. They're hard positions to fill. As for dispatch, has their scheduling is different. We have a number of part-time dispatchers, and they're not assigned shifts. They get to pick their shifts. So we often have those wee hour of the morning shifts that no one wants to cover. So we have to take someone who will from another shift and pay overtime. We've been running behind all year on dispatch overtime.
Mr. Chair, if Director Schofield, if you're done, the other item was even closer during, like in the earlier part of the year, even when we were discussing, back in June, the overtime line item was overdrawn at that point, and we've never had this much overtime in dispatch. It's there were a couple of people that I think were on sick leave, and then we were short one. We couldn't hire anybody, and so there were staffing issues as well, along with that. But usually it's like $8,000 to $10,000 a year. It's not usually this much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this I'm sorry. Yeah. So I don't recall what the amount was previously, but $130-some thousand. I mean, this is only a department that has a $900,000 budget. So this is suggests there's a bigger problem going on. Director Schofield, and then I want to get to Councilwoman Williamson.
Yes, I was just going to add, Mr. Chairman, that we did interview for dispatcher this morning. So hopefully she will be able to start within the next few weeks.
Okay. Councilwoman Williamson, thank you for your patience. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that it was noted earlier about our dispatch, and they were down on staffing earlier in the year. And I think it was a carryover from last year. It was part of the discussion during our, during the regionalization meetings that we were having. Also to Director Schofield, I know that you said that we were down officers, but I was just curious, since we're discussing that, do you know, I know we have a number of new hires, but do you know how many of them are actually on the road yet, or if they're still in training?
They're still in training. A couple of them were lateral transfers, so they didn't have to spend as much time in training, and they're out on the road now.
Great.
A couple of the younger entry-level ones are still in training. We will have one more officer starting another lateral on December 5th. So he won't need as much of the training either, but so it's a mix right now, but they are starting to get out on the road.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay. Any further questions from council? Mr. Scarl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Director Coffer. This money of $136,750, 78,750 being for salaries, that will carry us through the end of the year. Is that what it's projected for with the benefits too?
Yes. Are you referring to dispatch, correct?
Yeah, dispatch. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
The money that
Yes.
we just added. So this
Yes.
is figuring to
That's the
take this.
projection
Okay.
for the rest of the year. Yes.
Okay. If it's not, what happens then? If they eat it up in overtime?
We'll see your smiling faces for another transfer ordinance.
That's what I'm afraid of. Okay. Thank you.
Well, any other further questions from council on this? Well, again, I don't want to beat this too much into the ground, but we can't have, moderate or large size departments being 15 or 20% over budget. That would break us. So, but we'll pay the bills that we've incurred. So at this time, I would move to favorably recommend 2022-105 and ask for a second.
Mr.
Second.
Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
with suspension, Mr. Chairman, at the next meeting, please.
Okay, I will revise my motion to move that we favorably recommend this with suspension and ask for a second from my dear friend, Mr. Limpert.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes with suspension 3-0. And that concludes finance at 7:45.
You ready, B? Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. We'll start streets and transportation. 11/9/22 at 8:46, 7:46, sorry. And present, sorry, I've got a cold, and yesterday standing out, I got chilled through and didn't help. So present, our committee members Gilchrist, Glassburn, Kelly, council members Heeman, Limpert, Scarl, Williamson, the mayor, all the directors except recreation, special assistant to the mayor, and guests. Tonight we'll talk about 2022-99, 101, and 102. And we'll start with 99. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to request analysis, proposals for pavement management, survey analysis, reporting, and data hosting for the public improvements, further authorizing the mayor, subject to approval of the Board of Control, to enter into an agreement with the firm selected in the RFP process. Director Upton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular matter we spoke about in our ARPA discussions. We are looking to leverage the latest technology in pavement condition rating systems. Currently, we rely on our city engineer to do visual inspections by ATSM standards. This technology that we're looking to leverage, we'll use high-res 3D cameras, sensor technology to drive every single street in the city to aggregate the metadata to come up with a pavement condition rating system. They will also do sidewalk rating systems, and then we'll be able to have a more data-driven sidewalk enforcement program and an idea of how much concrete to buy for bulk purchasing for that particular program down the road. But not only will they drive and rate the streets, they will also assist the city in creating a 5-year rolling capital asset management plan so that we are delivering the right intervention for the right street at the right time. To oftentimes municipalities, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's the resident that registers the most complaints about their road is the one that ends up getting a road paved. This actually moves us into a data-driven decision-making system. The data hosting portion of this would be to publish a GIS-based PCR pavement condition rating systems map online so that our residents can see the streets that are getting paved this year and their ratings and what they're due to get, whether it be complete rebuild, crack sealing, mill and fill, whatever the case may be. And they'll see over that same stretch, that 5-year plan for us to keep our streets up to par.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Any questions from council? Mr. Lippert.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So, Mr. Upton, can you just clarify? So we currently have a street rating process. So besides for the better publicization and transparency outward from the city related to the ratings, what's going to be different as far as actually rating the road with this new process?
Well, currently our engineer rates the process based upon a visual inspection of one person's interpretation of the ATSM standards. So from one engineer to the next, they may rate streets differently depending upon how they interpret the street condition. This particular system uses 3D imagery and subsurface sensor technology to get a much clearer, better picture of the true condition of our roadway system. And then they assign a rating from 1 to 100 based upon aggregating the metadata as opposed to one visual inspection from one human engineer.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, one follow on. Does this process, is there something similar for street lighting, or would we maybe look to be able to follow a similar process as relates to street lighting? I know we've talked
I've seen some vendors that do this particular work that do right-of-way assets as well. So they're for example, they would be able to catch fire hydrants and street signs and some other things that are in the right-of-way as well. And if you could imagine kind of segways that have sensors on them as well, that would be driving every sidewalk. That's another piece of this puzzle that we'd like to have a data-driven model for, so that again, we will go through all of the city's sidewalks, rate all of them at once, and do one enforcement push rather than a single ward or a piece of a ward in a given year.
Yeah, thank you.
So Director Upton, this is to replace the guy in the golf cart that rides around with the wooden stick and takes measurements on the
Yes, sir.
sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are there any other questions from council? Ms. Gilchrist?
Thank you. I just wanted to know how this works. Like, is it just like one time? Do they go back frequently? Is it a one-time cost, or is it something that we have to do yearly?
So right now we have paid Bowen and Associates roughly about $15,000 every year to do their street rating system. Now, it's a great question because the data is only good at one point in time, and so it's suggested that every 3 years you do the comprehensive re-rating again. But the capital cost upfront is in creating the database that then becomes the launching point to refresh the data. But we already pay for street rating systems every single year over year, to the tune of about $15,000 a year for the city engineer to do the visual inspection that I spoke of earlier.
So is this the price for this comparable then to what we've already paid?
Correct. Over time, it becomes comparable. Yes. And the amount of money saved by doing the real value is the capital asset management program that does the right treatment to the right roadway at the right time to extend the useful life of preventative maintenance. Prevents you from rebuilding roads a lot sooner than you otherwise would have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I would recommend this to full council and ask for a second.
Second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. That passes 3-0. Next on the list is 2022-101, a resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funds for the fiscal year 2023 for the Brook Park Road Underpass Rehabilitation Project, further authorizing the mayor to accept grant funds if awarded and to, execute contract with Cuyahoga County if required and declaring emergency. Mr. Upton and Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Carney and I, we had spoken about the need for the replacement of the guardrails along Brook Park Road, and we took a drive out there and got out and started walking around, and come to notice that underneath the Brook Park Road underpass, we just need to look at this project holistically. And so the walkways are not ADA accessible. And in fact, after a nice rainfall, they're washed over to the point where they're barely passable. So we are looking in advancing a grant application that will address pedestrian safety, upgrade the guardrails, and increase safety in terms of lighting underneath the underpass, and looking at some ways in which we can take the runoff that happens during a rainstorm, those inlet valves that you see on the slope, all that rainwater just kind of washes into the walkways. And so we're looking at ways in which we can design or funnel that stormwater away from the walkways, because it, as Mr. Carney's folks we can attest to or brought to our attention, there's actually handicap individuals that use that particular walkway to access all of the amenities further down on Brook Park Road, like the Walmart and the Target and those types of things. So wanted to thank Director Carney for kind of elevating this in our discussions as to what we're going to do for our CDBG CDSG grant, and it's our intention to apply for both pots of funds and put them towards this particular project.
All right, thank you. Director Carney, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay, thank you for that commentary. Is there
I'm here for you when you need me.
Are there any questions from committee? Are there any questions from council? Ms. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there going to be any consideration to possibly putting in a sidewalk on the north side of the street there?
Are you
between and Clegg?
Pardon me?
Between the bridge and Clegg Road, there's no
That's not-
sidewalk on the north side.
Not contemplated within this grant, but that is something that we noted, that the sidewalk just kind of abruptly ends.
Yes.
And so that's something that I found particularly peculiar, and will work to try and identify more sources of funding to extend that sidewalk. But that's not contemplated as part of this grant application.
Okay, but is it possible that if we are approved, that could be part of the project to complete it all at the same time?
I think we would use an add alternate bidding mechanism so we could get pricing and then add it in if we're able to. Yeah.
Okay.
And work with Director Copper to identify a source of funding and try and leverage those economies of scale.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Is there any other questions from Mr. Scarrow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Upton, when you and Director Carney were looking at the underpass and that, how's the concrete like underneath the steel and everything? There's nothing loose that we have to worry about, falling down on somebody if they're underneath on that sidewalk. Is the bridge in pretty good shape overall on the underneath side?
In my extremely unqualified opinion, yes. It doesn't seem as though there's stuff shaking loose or any of the sort at this time, no.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I would go ahead and recommend this to full council and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes 3-0. And the last one is 102, a resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to make application on behalf of the City of North Olmsted to Cuyahoga County to participate in the supplemental grant program, and further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded and to execute a contract with Cuyahoga County and declaring an emergency. Mr. Upton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is same song, different verse. This is just allowing the department to apply for a separate pot of funding. Maximum funding available in the CDSG pot is $50,000. I'm remiss if I didn't indicate that the maximum available funding in the CDBG pot was $150,000. So apologies for that. But this is just allowing us to try and access multiple sources of funding to accomplish one project.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from committee? Any questions from council? Very good. Thank you. So I will go ahead and refer this to full council too and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And that will end our committee at 8:02 PM. Thank you.